Hello, everybody, and welcome to Talking Trees Live. I am your host, Katie Dubow, and you can find us here on Wednesdays talking with arborists from all over the country. I'm really excited to bring in our guest, Alexandra Julius, today, who's joining us in the field. Hey, Alex, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Katie. How are you?
Oh my gosh, technology is unbelievable, isn't it? Out there in all of your gear with your Bluetooth. I'm so happy it's working and I'm so happy you're here. Tell us where you're joining us from.
I am joining you from beautiful Champaign-Urbana, Illinois. It is, well, we got snow yesterday, but the crab apples disagree. They are still in full bloom. So we're in the high 40s just about here.
Oh, beautiful. So you got snow. I know a lot of you out there. I know the Davey corporate's based in Kent, Ohio, and I saw some pictures of the headquarters there covered in snow. It was beautiful. So while we're talking weather, if you're tuning in, drop an emoji. Although I don't know if I want to see any sunshine emojis right now, but drop us an emoji and let us know what the weather is like in your part of the woods. I would say rain. It's a rainy day here in Pennsylvania. So, hey, I'll take the rain in the spring. So today we are, as I mentioned, talking to Alex, and what we're talking about is National Arbor Day, which we're celebrating in 2 Fridays on April 30th. And we're going to learn a little bit from Alex about what the heck is Arbor Day? Why do we celebrate it in April? If you have any ideas, please drop it in the comments. Any ideas about what Arbor Day is and why we celebrate it in April. And we're also going to be learning a little bit from Alex just about careers in arboriculture. Alex is a woman, and it is still a minority in the field. And so we're trying to attract all types of people to come into the field of arboriculture. So we want to learn from Alex about how, what her journey was. And she's a competitive climber. So we're going to see some videos about climbing and learn all about that from Alex. So you ready?
Let's do it.
I don't even want to tell you, there is snow. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 snow emojis and one sunny Floridian tuning in. So if we could all be in Florida. So let's jump into who you are. You're the employee development and safety training specialist at the Davey Institute. And like I mentioned, you're a competitive climber. So you've coordinated tree climbing championships, and it just seems like tree care, the love of trees is in your blood. So tell me a little bit about your tree climbing and how you got into, oh my, no, don't tell me about it. We lost Alex. Maybe she's getting some wind there too. We were testing beforehand and everything looked great. But all right, we'll see. Corey, California heat. Great. Thanks, Corey, for rubbing it in. And Brooke, I think that's a cloud and wind emoji. I'm not entirely sure what that middle one is. I think on my computer, it gets a little funky. Let's see if we can bring Alex back in here. Not yet. All right, I'm going to kick her out and tell her you just need to come back and click the button, Alex. So we're talking Arbor Day. We're going to learn in a minute from Alex about why she wanted to be an arborist. And if any of you out there are in the field of arboriculture, we'd love to learn from you about why you became arborist. What do you love about trees? How did your love of climbing trees as a child transition into the love of a career? Wouldn't we all be so lucky to be able to do that as our career? Oliver saying trees, trees, trees. My guess is, Oliver, that you are an arborist. So let us know. Well, why don't we jump into Arbor Day? Because I have a little bit about the history of Arbor Day, and I think that Alex was going to share with us, but I have a little bit of research that I did on it because I find it so fascinating, this holiday that we celebrate our trees. And so when I looked it up, it was the story about the pioneers who were moving across the plains from the very wooded East Coast. If you live in the East Coast, you know it is a place of forests, or at least it used to be. And as they were moving across the West, they discovered the plains of Nebraska. When I was telling my husband this story, he thought I meant plane, like flying in. And he was like, wait, what year was this? But the plains of Nebraska. And they thought that the territory deeply lacked trees. They got there and it was flat. And they really miss the trees, but they also know that trees at that time, of course they still do, act as a really nice windbreak. So as the wind was whipping across the prairie, they said, oh my gosh, we miss our trees. And so it was the pioneer Sterling, I think, Morton of Morton Arboretum. I don't know about a Morton Steakhouse. If anybody knows that, I'd really be happy to know if you know the answer to that. But J. Sterling Morton was the one. He was a newspaper journalist. And shoot, Alex, it's still not working. We'll figure that out in a minute. A newspaper editor, and he became the secretary of the Nebraska Territory. And on January 4th, 1872, he first proposed Arbor Day. And the story goes that amazingly, from when he proposed it in January, they put out all these bulletins in the newspaper, and they really pushed people to plant trees. They had competitions, tree planting competitions, and they wanted to see how many people, individuals, they gave prizes out for the individuals who could plant the most trees. And 1 million trees were planted in Nebraska on that first Arbor Day, April 10th, 1872. I find that incredible that at that time, over 150 years ago, or 150 years ago, that they could plant 1 million trees. It's such a great story, and it's a great celebration of why we celebrate trees. It was the lack of them that made people really miss them and realize that they wanted trees in their lives. They had to have trees in their lives. And then, of course, other states started to adopt this. Hey, Alex. Other states, we're talking about the history of Arbor Day. You missed it, but other states started to adopt, and here we are with celebrating Arbor Day as the last Friday in April. But as Alex reminded me, not everywhere celebrates Arbor Day in April, right?
That's correct. We also, well, I'm from California, so Arbor Day's in March there.
So I guess the reason why it's celebrated in different parts of the country is because it's a better time to plant.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure we're planting trees at the optimal time. If we waited until April in a place like Florida or California, it's going to be way too hot by then. Similarly, if you go up to, say, Maine, it's going to be still too cold, so they celebrate in May.
Ah, interesting. So do you know in your region, all of you guys who are tuning in, when you celebrate Arbor Day in your area? I'd love to know if you know that little fact. I love tree quizzes. Like, what is your state tree? So many people do not know these fun little facts. So look it up, but don't leave us right now. So Alex, we're glad you're back. Thank you for dealing with those technical difficulties.
Sorry.
No, you're here now. So now we've covered the history of Arbor Day, but we want to know more about you. How did you get into this field? Did you know from when you were a little kid that this is something you wanted to do?
You know, I absolutely loved climbing trees as a kid, but I did not know that this was a career. I mean, how many times do they bring up at school who wants to climb trees for a living one day? I actually wanted to be a veterinarian and obviously did not take that route. The way I got started is I was a rock climber and was teaching rock climbing and doing that in college while also pursuing a completely different degree. And the campus arborist needed help, needed a support arborist. So they asked me, do you want to be the arborist assistant? You know what it's like to be on ropes. So they got me some training, and that's really how I got started. That's when I learned, hey, you can do this, and it's like your career, right? That's awesome. So it completely changed my path. No more veterinary anything, on to trees.
I love it. I wanted to be a veterinarian too. How funny is that? Love it. We must just love animals. Then I realized that you had to, deal with the terrible side of, the pain of animals too. And I thought, no, that's not good. I'm going to be a communicator.
Yep.
But Corey's making the good point that you're still a doctor. It's just a tree doctor. So
exactly.
That's awesome. Yeah. So I know that you are a smart cookie. You have a master's from UMass and you went to Smith. But do you need a degree to go to be an arborist? Is that something that's a prerequisite?
Absolutely not. So a lot of people do pursue an associate's degree or a bachelor's. And for some people, it just depends on what route they want to go. So for maybe business owners, you might want to go for that bachelor's degree. But a lot of people go the route of maybe just sort of a trade route, maybe getting their certifications and really getting it's the field experience that really truly matters. But then if you want to get into plant health care and really be looking at the diagnostics of plants and diseases or various areas, might be better off if you get a degree of some sort. But a lot of people mostly pursue the associates and then get their certification.
I heard something today that and this is not groundbreaking, you guys, but that on-the-job training is the best training that someone can get. Putting the number of years on a resume of experience actually doesn't mean anything. Years of experience, in a job, it's just how willing are you to do that job? Do you need a degree? Probably not. We all know. I mean, what was your degree? What did you end up getting a degree in?
I got a bachelor's in architecture and then my master's in arboriculture.
Yep. And I had a bachelor's in sports broadcasting. So kids out there, doesn't matter. You find what you love, and it's arboriculture. We're going to post a link to Davey's careers page, because I know that all over the country, wherever you guys are tuning in from, Davey is hiring. So this is an opportunity for those kids who either don't know what they want to do, or maybe they want to be a veterinarian. Who knows what their path could be? So now let's get a little bit into climbing, because I know that you're a competitive climber. You've mentioned rock climbing. Do you still do rock climbing? Is that still a hobby of yours?
I do. There's a little bit less out here since I've moved to Champaign, but I still absolutely love rocks. But it's just such a different experience. In rock climbing, your rope is there just in case you fall, but you might not ever need it. For arborists, we do everything on the ropes. We're climbing ropes more than we're actually climbing trees. So it's a very different experience, but what they do have in common is that comfort of trusting your system and feeling safe when you're 50, 60 feet up in the air. So they do have that common part.
And what a workout. Oh my goodness. Think about those gyms that people pay money for to go climb. You could do that in your career. Look buff, and that's what I would like. I just don't get to the gym anymore. During COVID. I didn't go to the gym before COVID anyway. Davey, also, we're hearing in the comments that Davey does training. And so if, a degree is not the path for you, or even if the degree was the path for you, Davey can train you. There's a great program called DITS. Maybe Courtney, you can post the link to that as well. But all of these training programs, did you go to DITS, Alex?
I have attended, not as a formal attendee, but I've been there to observe and to help out with some of the instruction. But it's true, we do a lot of the training, and it's really huge for us. Even if you don't come in with any prior experience, we can train up on all of that. A lot of the time when people have some experience, they may have come from a place that didn't have the best safety regimen, the best safety protocol, and then you have to unlearn those habits. So sometimes coming with a blank slate, we can just teach you everything. And you know that you're doing everything safely, everything correctly. And we use science-based research on how to work on trees to let them be the best tree self that they can be.
I love it. Oliver's commenting, who needs a gym? We're arborists. So I love it. And welcome Denny from Round Rock. I don't know what state that is in, but it must be warm because they celebrate Arbor Day the first Friday in November. So it must be a place that is warm. So Alex, we have a couple of videos that I wanted to show to everybody, and we were going to have you walk us through it, but Alex can't see the video, so we're going to play the video, and then we're going to come back and talk through. These are some awesome climbing videos that I want to share with you that Davey put together about what it's like to be a day in the life of an arborist. So this is exactly what Alex's everyday life is like, except when she's on Facebook Live with us. So let's play this, and we'll come right back and talk to Alex a little bit about what this is like.
the best part of my day.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. The best part of my day. Is that awesome or what? That was amazing. So, Alex, that was a colleague of yours. Who was that climbing the tree?
So two of our esteemed skills trainers, Corey Shepard, who's in the Pennsylvania area, and then Emmett Schutz, who's in the New England area.
Amazing. And so I know we have a lot of questions. So you guys out there, please ask us your questions about climbing a tree because I just don't understand how that happens. It must take so much strength. But does it take a lot of strength or is the rope, is it like a pulley system?
So, as we've evolved as an industry, we've really gone from brute strength and just a lot of hard work to get yourself in a tree to now we have people really who are innovative and working on systems to make it as ergonomically friendly as our bodies. Because once we're up there, we have to do tree work, right? We have to operate a chainsaw. We have to be able to maneuver. So if we're exhausted once we get up there, it's not really a good system. So there have been a lot of strides in our equipment inventions to just make it so much better and more ergonomic for our bodies. And it allows more people to get into tree climbing, right? You don't have to be world's strongest person to get into tree climbing. If you have a little bit of coordination to figure out how to walk your way up the rope, then you can probably get into a tree.
So we've got questions coming in. Jen is asking if you ever get scared I'm sure if you're scared of heights, but I know that you're safely strapped in, but does it ever like get your heart racing when you're that high up in a tree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you stop being scared, that's when it's bad, right? We need to always be on our toes, listen to the trees. So I know it sounds weird and it seems perfect given where we're at right now, but the trees do talk to you, right? When we're up there, we can hear them creaking, we can feel their movement, and we recognize as experienced arborists when it just doesn't sound right. And sometimes I take it as a personal cue to myself if I can't get my throw line, which is what we saw Corey doing there, was throwing the line into the tree. If I can't get it in, then maybe it's the tree telling me, not today. Today's not your day.
I love that. Trusting your gut, those are the kinds of things that I'm sure you learn with experience, but talking to the trees, it just gave me chills hearing that. All right, we're getting more questions. What is the highest that you've climbed in a tree?
Probably the highest I've gone is in the 80 to 90 foot range. I am super jealous of my colleagues who've been in the redwoods in California and who've gone 300 plus feet. That would be an amazing experience. Hopefully one day I'll have that. But some of the higher trees, the tulips in the area, those get some pretty good height to them. And it's just such a different experience, such a different view because you can see the whole landscape around. So I love it.
Yeah, speaking of talking to the trees, it almost feels like what it's like to be a tree, being up there. So what I've always wondered, I'm sure you guys have this as well, but how do you get the first line up there? Like, how do you get some of those things that you pull yourself up in the tree at that height?
Absolutely. And that is probably the number one question that I get is, how did you get that line up there? Because they always get there after it's already in, right?
Right.
So I have right here what's called a throw line cube. Inside of it, I have a throw line and a throw ball. And that's what we saw Corey throwing there. So this is just a weighted ball. It's got some pellets in it, so it's got some heft to it. They're usually around 6 to 16 ounces. This one's a 10 ouncer. And we've got just this light string on it. And with some pretty good accuracy and not a ton of strength, we can swing this and get it 60, 70 feet up in the air into a branch union that we feel comfortable with. And then from there, we can pull our climbing line up. So it's a pretty amazing system, simple, and it works. So it just takes a lot of practice.
Wow. So you throw that up and then you hook something that's a little bit sturdier to it and kind of pull that. Got it. I was going to say that line does not look strong enough to hold a person. So then that gets pulled up the tree, switched with the cool.
There we go. Yep. So our climbing line can go up and then it's up and over, and now we can climb this, and we put this away before it gets tangled in every branch possible.
Well, is it like a pitcher or a catcher? Like, is someone really good at throwing that line up into the tree and then someone's better at weaving it up? Or do you guys all do all the jobs?
Well, for the most part, we end up doing all of our own, but sometimes if you have a really good team, you could have someone who's super skilled at throw line, and they're getting the line set while someone else is getting the chainsaws all fueled up and ready to go, and it can be a real team effort. So there's a definite skill with throw line. Some people are better than others, but again, it's just practice, and
Sure.
eventually you get in there and you're in the
Yeah.
tree. So it's all worth
Yeah.
it.
Oh, that's so fascinating. So we got another question from Megan. She's asking, how do you bring your tools up with you?
That is another great question. Let me grab my harness right here. So we have a ton of approved equipment. This is my harness kind of stripped down that I would use. So I'd wear this as a belt, and I've got leg loops. So I literally just sit in this, and we've got tons of just little loops and holes where I can clip equipment to. The chainsaw would go onto this. So everything just sits right here, right around me. So I just have everything ready to go.
So you go up with everything. You don't, do people ever pull you things up?
Very often you'll get up into the tree and then have the grounds person tie on the chainsaw and then send that up, because having that sort of flopping around isn't the most comfortable. So you can get up into the tree, get settled, get yourself situated, and then have your grounds person tie it on and you can pull it up.
Do you wear special shoes? Like, I know we've seen in the olden days, they had the shoes with the picks on them. Do you still wear those shoes?
So, that has also really evolved. So depending on the kind of work, some people still really like those high-heeled, rubber-soled boots. But because our style of climbing has changed and we're not using the spurs anymore unless we're doing a removal, which is a reason for that, we're now really switching much more to a rubberized, what was close to what were called approach shoes or hiking shoes that rock climbers use, and now it's really evolved into this really rubberized boot, which has lots of ankle support, but it also allows us, we even put equipment on our feet that allow us to climb the tree. So we're using all parts of our body now instead of just our arms and our core. We can now use, especially for women, our strength is in our legs. So if we can use equipment on our feet and really press down, it's perfect.
Wow. So a couple funny comments. Oliver is calling your harness the Cadillac of harnesses. I guess
It
it's a pretty
is. I love
fancy
it.
harness. And Jennifer said you deserve it. And then Sue Bennett also said she bets you're really good at cornhole if you're throwing that line up in the tree, which those were so funny. I had to mention them. But we did get a question about the throw line. Does it ever get stuck to a point where you can't get it out of the tree, or do you have a couple of them in case one does get stuck?
I always have 3 with me, so if that tells you anything about how I feel I'm going to do with it, they can be your best friend and your worst enemy. I swear every single leaf, every twig, anything, your throw line will find it. So you'll find that most arborists are very particular about don't touch my throw line cube. I have it all perfectly the way I want it. This is it fully open. But I do run the risk of the wind blowing it over, and then I have a rat's nest because there's about 180 feet
Oh,
of
wow.
string in here. So if you can imagine just sort of a string rat's nest. So I know some arborists will spend the evening, if they've had sort of a bad day with their throw line, it might be an activity you do while you're watching a movie in the evening to untangle that throw line.
Oh my gosh, that's great. You guys have some awesome questions. If you have any more, please let us know. So you did mention already about the height. Is there a height limit? Like you shouldn't go higher than this?
So we shouldn't go any higher than we feel comfortable, right? So if I don't feel comfortable going higher than 10 feet off the ground, then maybe that's my limit at the moment.
Yeah.
But beyond that, our limitation is just really the height of the tree and whatever the highest branch union is that's strong enough to hold us. So if you're in those redwoods, you can get 300 plus feet, you're fine. The main thing is to make sure that your rope is going to be long enough to get back down to the bottom. So very often we'll have our rope to be at least twice as long as the height of the tree, if not more, depending on, gets into nuance, but just depends on what type of climbing we're doing, how our setup is. And then also, because of that height, sometimes we might have to reset where we're tied in, so that way we don't run out of rope. And then we also always tie a stopper knot in the end of our line, so we don't accidentally come off the end of our climbing line. So that's something that can happen if you're climbing a tree that is taller than your rope is long enough to get you down to the ground. So that stopper knot is our safety. It's literally as it sounds. It's a knot near the end of our rope, so that way we can't accidentally come off of it. So always have our safety checks.
Yeah, Oliver's saying always tie a stopper knot. And Jen is saying her limit is 6 feet. You guys tell us your limit. How high do you think you could climb in a tree? I feel like the older I get, the less my threshold is. I mean, I was on a swing the other day and I was like, oh, my belly is starting to feel. So I'm sure are you a roller coaster person?
You know, I was probably in my 20s, but I recently learned about those playground ride things where you're in a tire and they spin around, and I had never done that before. I was ill for probably the next 3 hours. So I don't know if I'm a roller coaster person anymore.
I look at a roller coaster and I get nauseous. Whitney has a great question. What's the best piece of climbing advice that you've received during your career?
That is a great question. Probably the best advice I have received is to find a mentor, find somebody who knows more than myself. And that's how I've learned how to climb. Actually, a lot of the training that I've received and where I've absorbed things has come from the competition, because people are trying to find the most ergonomic and the most efficient ways of getting into a tree so they can win the competition. So what a great way then to piggyback off of that and find out, well, what equipment are you using and how have you tested this? And keep asking those questions and find out more. So getting those mentors, and I have tons of them. I haven't landed on one mentor. It's like the whole community is my mentor, whoever I can learn from.
That's beautiful. I love that. How long have you been an arborist?
I think I'm at about 11 years.
Got it. That was Megan's question, and it just took my question right out of my head. Oh, about climbing, when you mentioned climbing. So talk to us about what it's like to do a competitive climb. I mean, you do this for a living, but I'm sure it's a very different thing when you're doing a competitive climb. So start to finish, you need to do the throw line. You have to do it all.
Absolutely. So there are different events, and the purpose of each event is really to test the different skills, because it's different skill sets. Some people are really fast. Some people are much more methodical and graceful in a tree. So we have the throw line event, which is, as it sounds, we're trying to get to certain targets in the tree, and they're worth different points depending on how high or how difficult it is. So that's one of them. Another one is called the blade speed, which is as fast as you can get into the tree, and there's a cowbell up there. So that is a pure speed. There's the ascent event.
Are you all climbing different trees at that one? You're not climbing the same tree.
So it'll be 5 different trees for the preliminaries, but everybody will climb the same belay speed. Everybody will climb the same. What we have is work climb, where you start at the top, and then there are different challenges around the tree. So one is where there's a bucket full of limbs, and you're throwing the limbs, and you have to hit. Sometimes people have a kiddie pool or a trash can or something. Every event is a little bit different. So they're all testing our abilities to do different tasks.
Does your company sponsor you, or do you have sponsors in competitive climbs, or people do it for fun? You get an award? Just because you love it?
Absolutely. I mean, it's different for everybody. Davey fully supports it, but there are some people who are sponsored by some of our key manufacturers. Wow. And they are amazing, amazing competitors. I just sit there in awe of them. I'm very competitive. I am totally fine losing to these people because they are just incredible climbers, and I learned so much from them.
That is so cool. All right, I interrupted you. I'm sorry. Do you have more things you want to talk to us about climbing?
Oh, there are just two more events. There's the ascent event, which is a straight rope climb, and everybody has their own system that they've created or that they like, and it's another speed event. And then there is an aerial rescue where we have a dummy in a tree simulating a victim, and we are tasked with getting them out of the tree. And the most important thing, aside from not making ourselves a second victim, but is also patient care and making sure we're taking care of whatever their injury is and getting them down safely.
Wow, I would never have thought of, I would have never crossed my mind. You hear about, I feel like cats up a tree more often than anything, but obviously there are much more serious times when, natural disasters or for whatever reason, someone got up a tree and they can't get back down. How interesting. Do you have a
And it
favorite?
all um, ooh, great. I think my favorite's probably the throw line. It's so hit or miss. Um, it can be a really great day. It can be a really bad day. And the whole event culminates with what we call the Masters Challenge, which is taking pretty much everything minus the aerial rescue. And you start off with an empty tree. You're throwing into the tree. You're getting into it. You're doing all these stations that are in there with these challenges, and you're coming back down. So it's taking all those skill sets. Somebody can qualify for the Masters because they've had an amazing day in the preliminaries and then get tripped up on the throw line, and then they never get in the tree. So it's such a hit or miss. Throw line for me, I might have a day that I get something spectacular, and I might have another day that I walk away with zero.
Mm-hmm.
So it's such a gamble, but I love it.
Wow, we're getting more questions. I know that we asked you how long you've been an arborist. You said about 11 years. Is that the same amount of time you've been climbing trees?
Yeah, because my start was right off the bat climbing. I didn't actually know that there were other options in arboriculture beyond that. So I think some other people might start another route with arboriculture. For me, it was, oh, I can climb trees. That's a thing. Cool. And then down the road, I learned, oh, there are these other things like plant health care and doing inventories and utility tree work. So I learned about all of that later. But there are tons of options in arboriculture, but climbing is definitely where I started, and that's what got me.
So 11 years, Hank. And listen, we posted a link earlier, but Courtney, maybe you could post it again if there is someone you know that might be interested in any of the things that Alex just climbed in honor of Arbor Day. We are promoting trees as always, but we're also promoting careers. And see, I say arboriculture. Is that wrong? It's arboriculture?
You know, I've heard it different ways. I studied out in New England where they say apiculture, so it's all very different. I say arboriculture. Maybe it's a California thing. I'm not sure,
All right. Well,
but
you
I've
guys
heard
can tune in.
arboriculture.
Potato, potato. Two more
Yep.
great questions. Do you have a favorite tree to climb?
Ooh, a favorite. Usually, I get asked what's my favorite tree, which is the rainbow gum, Eucalyptus deglutica.
Oh,
But it looks like it's a painted lamppost. It's
oh,
beautiful. Favorite tree to climb? Probably. Ooh, great. I have to think on that one, but I do love just a maple of any kind. Maybe not a Norway maple, but there are some beautiful maples out there that are just lovely.
oh. All right. And Sage is asking, have you been in a tree and the weather has shifted?
Absolutely. Actually, the irony of it is I was in a Dawn Redwood installing lightning protection. So sometimes you can put in lightning protection to keep, if if it's a threat of lightning, it'll go down this copper wire and be dissipated out into the ground and not harm the tree. Well, I was installing lightning protection and a lightning storm was rolling in. So got out of that tree quickly, and it was pretty much completely installed. It's actually just an extension of the system, and we were just fixing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was an interesting day.
Yeah, I guess you have to plan. I mean, the weather's so fickle anyway, but you have to plan. Sage is saying, talk to me a little bit more about lightning protection.
Absolutely. So we put a copper wire. It's basically nailed into the tree, and what it does is it keeps the lightning from striking the tree itself, which would cause
Hmm.
all of that to go into the tree. And very often trees will kind of blow up and crack, they'll dry out instantly. And so we don't want that to happen. So what happens is we have this terminal at the top, and the lightning would strike that and go down the copper wire out, and we have a grounding rod far out from the root system, and all of that energy will be dissipated out. And so it keeps the tree from basically being destroyed by lightning.
Interesting. Oliver's mentioning that a lot of golf courses have lightning protection, which is interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Well,
they're
so
great candidates.
go
The
ahead.
really tall trees in an area, if it's the only tree, a golf course that really, if you lose a big tree, it changes your course, right? So I was working at an arboretum at that point, so that was why they had lightning protection. So they'll really do whatever they can to protect tall historic trees. Lightning protection is great for that. Cabling is also great for that. There's a lot we can do to try and help protect trees from their own wear and tear of age in their environment.
And the crazy climate we have. So I have one more
Yep.
video that is going to be a prelude to this question of which you just answered, lightning protection, cabling, but why do we climb trees? What's the point? I know it's fun, you do it competitively, but let's watch this video and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more about why we're climbing trees.
Great.
All right, I'm gonna hide us.
Yeah.
The unmute button is literally the saying of the year. When I just saw that view from the top, it kind of made my belly turn. But so he's obviously pruning, or is that called pruning when you're cutting back that big of a limb?
Yep, he's still pruning.
So he's obviously
Absolutely.
pruning a tree. And so do you think that would be for damage? It could be for making sure the wind could flow through that. So that's probably, is that the most common reason why you guys climb trees?
So a lot of the time why we're pruning is for safety. If a house is underneath the tree, or say there's a playground around, we want to make sure that anything that is dead, dying, or diseased, that we've gotten that out of there, so people are out of harm's way. So in that case, I'm not sure if there's maybe a target or something. I think they were doing it for demonstration, but you might want to get out that dead limb, which is what he was removing.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that's the most common reason why you're climbing trees, or is there a more common reason why you guys would be up a tree?
Usually it's for the pruning aspect of it. A lot of the time it's, as I mentioned, for those dead branches, but sometimes we might be going up and cabling, which is if you have maybe a poor branch union, if you have a really tight branch union, we might come in and put in what's called a cable up in the canopy, and that just sort of helps mitigate how much movement. Trees move a lot, and we don't want to stop that movement, but we want to kind of limit it a little bit. And so we might put in a cable. There's the lightning protection that we might put in. Arborists also do the holiday installation of Christmas lights. So there's a whole gamut of things that we can do.
I love it. Denny, I'm sorry I missed your question earlier. I don't know how to pronounce this word. So he's asked earlier and just reminded me again about the dangers of hypoxylon in trees when climbing. Do you know what that means?
I believe that is going to fall into the diagnostics, which I'm not super strong at. I would save that for some of our experts in diagnoses. But yeah, we are mindful when we're working about kind of the time of the year and what trees we're working on, what risk factors they might have. So some trees are prone to certain fungi and diseases, and we want to kind of protect what time of year. So we're not going to prune oaks in the middle of the year because we don't want to introduce any fungi and have them die back. And then also, again, just depending on the time of the year and if the tree can compartmentalize, which is another term, which is, can they handle the work that we're doing on them? So if we're making if we're doing big pruning cuts, is that tree going to be able to handle that big pruning cut and compartmentalize any decay and not end up with just this big dead spot now that we've
Mm-hmm.
created.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely some considerations, but I would leave the diagnoses to the experts there.
Well, we'll look into that, Denny. He's telling me it's hypoxylon. We don't
Hypoxylon,
know.
yep.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know how to pronounce that. But and
You
another
got
great
it.
question. We could probably be here all day with questions for you about climbing trees. Is there a more difficult tree to prune when you're up in the tree than others?
Absolutely. So a tree that has never been pruned is going to be generally a big challenge because it's going to have a ton of dead branches. I just climbed up a pin oak last week, and we call that a Velcro tree because everything sticks to it, including
Oh,
ourselves. They're really kind of a bit frustrating to get into, and if they've never been pruned, then that can be even more challenging. But there are also some other ones. If a tree has thorns, so like the honey locust, if it's not the thornless variety, that's going to be kind of painful. Um, every tree has its own little thing. Even for some people, sycamores, if they have bad allergies, then that might be difficult for them to climb because they're going to just be runny nose,
yeah.
watery eyes,
Yeah.
and so every tree has its nuance.
Every tree's got something, just like people, right? Everybody's got something.
Absolutely.
Well, that is great. I think we've gone through. If you guys have any more questions, let me know as we wrap up here. But we've talked a lot at length about what other jobs, we've already mentioned plant healthcare. You said climbing a tree. You can be a plant healthcare specialist and be a researcher. You could be in marketing, you could be in graphic design and still be in arbora or arboriculture or arboriculture. I can't do a New England accent.
Abaculture.
Yeah, there you go. There are so many ways to join the Davey family, and we'll post that link one more time. But let me see if I think we've got all of our questions answered. Alex, we so appreciate your time today. It has been so much fun to picture you doing that competitive climbing. Are there any events scheduled for the future or not yet?
I've heard rumors of some, but unfortunately we had to cancel pretty much all of them in 2020, and we're starting to get into the competition, what would normally be the competition season. We already know that our international event, which is all of our smaller events are feeder to that one, we already know that that's canceled for this year. So there might be a few happening, but probably 2022 will be the time to look for those competitions.
And people were commenting earlier that many of them had been to the competitions and they thought it was so much fun. Is there a page to go to find local competitions, or do you just kind of have to look at your local news outlets?
Absolutely. So you can go to the International Society of Arboriculture. They have a website for ITCC, which is the International Tree Climbing Championship. And there they'll have an events calendar on their website of where and when all of the competitions are going to be scheduled. And they're all over the world. So if you find yourself in Australia, there will be a competition there. There's going to be one in Indiana. They have them in California. Anywhere
Cool.
you want to go, they're there.
Awesome. Well, we are getting so many people saying thank you, that this was really fun. They really enjoyed the lessons, the props, you being out there in your full safety equipment. So looks like a fun job and
It is.
something that you don't have to sit at a computer. I know a lot of people just don't want to sit at a computer all day. This is the job that will get you out there in nature and doing something fun. So Alex, I envy your career. It looks really fun. And it was so much fun talking to you today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Katie.
And we have a special edition of Talking Trees. Alex won't be here, but let me just double check the date, April 26th, that's Monday at 11 a.m. right here on Facebook. RJ Laverne is going to be back and sharing a children's book. Have you ever heard of the book Little Acorn?
No, but that's adorable.
He's going to be reading Little Acorn. So if there's an event, we will post a link to the event here. You can RSVP if you want to share it with your local library or local teachers, or if you know parents who are home with little ones who could use a break, and put them in front and listen to RJ tell a story about the Little Acorn. That's at 11 a.m. Eastern on Monday, April 26th. So please RSVP to that. We'll be back on May 5th with Chilo Tovar. We're talking about wacky weather. So, like the snow that you guys all out there were posting your emojis today, we'll be back talking about wacky weather on May 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern. For now, we'll say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching. If you want more, check out Davey's podcast, Talking Trees. And of course, you can always find an arborist on our local page. Thanks so much, Alex. We're going to end with that first video so everyone can see it one more time. Have a great day.
Thank you.